I know I asked you guys last week or maybe a couple weeks ago, but is anybody really working expireds hard, or is it just kind of something you know you should maybe do or have thought about doing, but aren't really sure what to do?
I'm working with Justin Wickens hires out some services for me. And so we are actually working on an expired listing campaign right now. So which I will
Awesome.
be taking pieces from this for that.
Cool. Yeah, and feel free to share anything else that you have on this. But this is kind of a high level, step-by-step framework of how to work expireds. There's a bunch of different ways you can do this, but we'll just kind of start. I think there's such an opportunity in expired leads, as we've talked about, because these are already people that have raised their hands, signed a listing contract, likely got their home somewhat ready for sale, and it didn't sell. So these are motivated sellers who were likely let down either by their agent or by the entire process. And a lot of these people still want to sell, but they need something different. So we know that inventory statewide is still really tight. It's just over 4 months of supply, 6 months is a balanced market. Um, well-priced and well-positioned listings, as we know, are selling. Um, Listing prices and sold prices are up year over year, which means if a property is marketed and positioned correctly, sellers can still come out ahead in the market. And it's agents that are top producers, successful agents who have this as a pillar of their business because they know how important it is. And they also know how easy it can be if you have the right strategy in place. So I kind of wanted to touch, right? Listings don't just expire because nobody wants to buy them. And so when you start to think about putting an expired strategy in place, you've got to explore why the property actually didn't sell. One of the, most likely reasons, it was overpriced from the beginning. And so all these price reductions signaled in a buyer's mind that there must be something wrong with it, and they moved on. It could be weak marketing, poor photos, no video, limited marketing online, which means buyers are scrolling right past it and not even considering it. Um, a a great example of this is the house that Nancy bought last year. Had been on the market, what, Nancy, 6, 9 months, if not longer. It was an excellent
Maybe a
listing.
year.
Yeah, excellent listing, probably a little bit overpriced, but the photos were terrible. They didn't highlight any of the great things about the home. And so buyers looked at it and continued to scroll right past. I'm sure we've all sold houses like that where you go to show it and you're like, wow, this house is actually way better than it looks online. Buyers are scrolling, they're not even considering those. It could have been poor communication between the seller and the agent, or it could have been a wrong agent fit. There's a lot of agents in the market that are poor communicators and are not available. How many times have you guys tried to get a hold of another agent and their voicemail box is full and it takes them 2 weeks to call you back? Right? The way that an agent operates in the process of selling a listing can be one of the real reasons why listings expire. If they're not marketing the property well online and they're also not marketing it, verbally with other agents in the marketplace, listings can sit. And all of these areas, why a listing expired, is an area area of opportunity for you to come in and show that seller that you can do things differently. And so, right, here's what the market is telling us. I think this is kind of a wild stat, but year to date through the first quarter of 2026, nearly 1 in 4 listings failed to sell. That should raise a bunch of red flags for you guys. This is a growing trend. Now is the time to jump in and really become the expert in capitalizing on this business that's sitting right there out, on the table for you to come and not only help a seller out, but also convert more business. Um, oh, sorry, I have that first number in there twice, but I pulled a quick list for homes in Sauk, Dane, and Iowa County. 428 homes have expired in the last 6 months. And in just the last 7 days in those same three counties, 30 properties have expired. That's a lot of listings out there that likely still need to be sold, but are just looking for the right agent to come along and do it. And so what does that look like, right? Can't,
Reagan,
yep.
of those 420, did you look and see if any of those were relisted or sold? Because
I
normally,
didn't,
like
yeah.
I looked listed, like active, sold, and expired, and then sort them, and it just seems like a lot because I don't come up with that many. I mean,
Yeah,
I
that's
didn't
a,
look at all counties, but
yeah. Um, for example, it was like, I ended up adding them together. It was seven in Iowa County, like 150, um, or 290 some in Dane County and 100 in Sauk County. But to the point that Beth just made, you need to confirm that these aren't relisted or haven't sold. So I just pulled a quick list as I was getting ready for this presentation this morning. But that kind of leads me into step one, right? You can't just pull a list of expireds and start calling the sellers. You've got to do some research first, right? When a listing expires, we know that these sellers are getting inundated with postcards in the mail and generic marketing, and none of that usually works as well as warm calling them. Sellers can feel the difference if you're calling just on a cold call and know actually nothing about their property, or whether or not you've done research, right? So research the price history. What was the original list price? What was the final list price? How many reductions did they do along the way? What was the total days on market, and how did that compare to the neighborhood or the community average? Because that context is going to matter to the seller. Also, the marketing quality, right? How did the photos look? Did they have video? Did they have any open houses? And so, your goal as you reach out and start conversations with these expired sellers isn't just to pitch yourself on why you're the best agent in town and they should list with you and their last agent was an idiot. Your goal is to have a complete diagnosis of why you think that their property didn't sell, and then use that to leverage the reasons why you think you are the right agent to help them sell the property. Um, a question we always get on expireds is, well, how do I find their contact information? There's a lot of different tracing tools out there, PropStream, Batch Leads, RedX, True People Search. I mean, a quick Google of the person's name can likely lead you to their contact information. LinkedIn, social media, sometimes a quick Facebook search will pop them up and you can shoot them a message. And if all of that fails, you can always send them a handwritten letter directly to their house, or even better yet, go knock on their door, right? At the end of the day, you can still find them physically in person if you can't find them, via phone or email. This is another thing I see often with expired listings is there could be some inaccurate information on the listing, which makes the whole listing, could be, not very credible. And so as you're doing your research on these properties, pull up the assessor's report. See what the assessor has for finished square footage, below grade square footage, bedrooms, bathrooms. Cross-reference that with the MLS history. Look at the listing that just expired, but you can also pull historic listings for that property. Um, and then make sure you do understand, right, the standards for above grade square footage, finished basement areas, what actually counts as finished square footage, so that you have an accurate, credible picture of the statistics of the house. And this is another thing that I think some agents fail to do, but research permit history. Sometimes this is on the assessor's report. I know in Dane County, you can pull a list of all permits that were filed for a property. But look for things like, did they pull a roof permit, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, window replacements? You can get a lot of information about a property based on which permits they pulled, and you can use those in your marketing, right? Maybe the previous agent missed all of those, undersold them as improvements, didn't really talk about them much. But these price improvements that you're going to pitch to the expired seller with this included in your marketing strategy immediately sets you apart from their previous agent if they didn't use this. right? You can say to the seller, hey, I found these things. Can you confirm that these dates are true if you know them? I'd like to show you how I'd use these to tell a better story to buyers about your property that we're trying to get sold. And all of this comes in before you've even talked to them about price. It helps them understand that you really do know what you're talking about when it comes to their house. And I think this is a question that you should all put into your script or role play. Um, because most agents, right, they reach out to an expired and they start presenting about everything that's great about themselves. But before you do any of that, I think the best question to ask these sellers is, hey, what would have to be true about working with a new agent for you to feel confident this time? Because most sellers come to an agent saying they want to sell their house, right? But selling is rarely the real goal. Yes, they want their property to sell, but what is the underlying motivating factor there? Do they need to move? Are they trying to cover expenses? Are they, maybe upside down in their house and they're trying to get out of a financial situation? Right? Selling their physical asset of real estate is the mechanism that is going to help them get to whatever that goal is. And so when you understand the motivation of the seller and the problem that they're trying to solve, you stop pitching about yourself as an agent and you start positioning yourself as the person that's there to help them solve their problem. That's the difference that you can make, especially in an expired situation, because these people put their house on the market for a reason and didn't accomplish that. And so a lot of their frustration probably stems from, hey, we have this issue we're trying to solve. We're trying to solve it through selling our house. It didn't work. So where do we go from here? And this is the kind of step two, what the first call. So you've done all of your research, you understand everything about their house. The goal of your first communication with these sellers is to get an appointment and not the listing, right? So you can call them and say, hey, this is Reagan with Remax Preferred. I know your home, or I noticed your home recently came off the market, but I'm just asking one question. Are you still planning to sell your property? Right? They might say yes, no, fly a kite, whatever that looks like. We'll talk about objections in a second. But then ask them, right? Hey, I've done some research on your home and I have a few thoughts on what might have happened. I'm not making any promises until I've walked your property, but I'd love just 20 minutes with you. Would Thursday or Friday this week work? Again, we talk about that assumptive close with asking a question at the end, giving them two options so that they're more inclined to take one of them. And if they just brush you off and are trying to get off the phone, you can say, hey, I completely understand that, but before I let you go, has your goal of selling changed or has just your timeline? Right? Asking these deeper questions will give the seller the opportunity to give you the information that you're looking for without them maybe even realizing that that's the real, point of this call. Important to remember with expireds, the majority of sellers are not going to say yes on the day one or the first call. The agents that are building really successful strategies with expired listings are the agents that are willing to out follow up every single other agent in the market. And every touch point should deliver value, not just a check-in, right? So the first call, the day one, right? Either you make the call and they answer or you leave a voicemail. Day two, send them some market insights. Day four, send a handwritten note. A week later, try to call them again. Day 10, try to send them an email about, hey, here's everything I do differently, summarizing the research that you've compiled. 2 weeks later, give them a third call. 3 weeks later, final check-in by phone and email. It's likely that you're going to make contact at one point during these, first 3 weeks. And so obviously your follow-up changes after you make contact. But most people call an expired, they get told to buzz off and they never try again. But consistent follow-up with value that is delivered to them will allow you to win more opportunities of expired listings because most agents are walking away the first time that somebody doesn't, answer their phone or respond to the letter that they sent to their house. And so let's say, right, your follow-up works. They say, sure, come on over on Friday. Would love to meet with you. Again, this is, you've got to recognize that these sellers are in a different position than a regular seller whose home is ready to hit the market for the first time. And so you have to lead with curiosity. These people have been through, right, a listing of 60, 90 days, 6 months, 12 months, whatever that looks like, and are probably frustrated, burned out, and have lost a lot of faith in real estate agents. And so these sellers are looking for an agent who's actually going to listen to them. And so open with something like, hey, before I share any of the research I've done on your house, I'd love to hear from you. What do you think went wrong with the last listing? And actually listen. There's such a skill in asking a question to listen to the response and not just listening so that you can get to your next point. And once you kind of master this skill, you can listen to their response and then immediately shift your entire presentation to hit on what they just told you. So if they said something like, hey, I really felt ignored by my agent, they never reached out, I had no idea what was going on, right? You can walk them through what your communication looks like. Show them what consistent check-ins with your sellers does for selling a property and how, right, you really become a team with the seller and make sure everybody's on the same page. If they said, hey, we had really, we didn't have that many showings, present your marketing plan side by side with what was done before. If the previous listing had terrible listing photos, show them how you use professional photography and videography in all of your listings. And if they were overpriced, most expired sellers may not openly admit that they think their listing was overpriced. But this is your opportunity to present your CMA with honesty and data, and you're not there to flatter them, right? They're looking for a solution. And so back up your price point with numbers and data and show them, hey, this is what you were listed at, but here's what the market is supporting. And if you do truly and honestly want to sell your property, this is where you need to be. There is a time and place, right, in this presentation to talk about your own business. They're not just evaluating your marketing plan or what your reputation is. They're evaluating you and they're looking for a different solution from the previous and likely negative situation they went through with their agent. And so have these stats about your own personal business ready and part of this presentation. What is your sale to list ratio? Right? If you're at or above the market average, that's proof that the price that you're going to recommend to them and execute on actually works. And you can't just claim this, you have to show them the numbers in proof. Same thing with average days on market. How quickly are you selling your listings compared to what the rest of the market is doing? Sellers also want to know how active you are in their market. How many listings have you taken in the last 12 months? What other comparable listings have you sold in their neighborhood or nearby? The specificity here is what builds your credibility, right? You're not just going into a random market because you saw an expired listing and you're looking to get more business, but back it up with what you've actually done in the area. And then at the end of the appointment, right, it's time to close. So you can say something like, based on everything you've shared and what I've seen in the market, I really believe that I can get your house sold, but only if we price it correctly from day one and execute my full marketing plan from the start. I'd love to earn the opportunity to work with you. And what would it take for you to feel confident moving forward with me? Right. The seller will then likely tell you exactly what they need for you to get the listing. So listen to that, comprehend it, and respond directly. Don't pivot to another pitch. Right? You should have all of this information about yourself and your business completely memorized. And so when they say, here's what I need, you should have an answer to that. And it's not another pitch, but it's reconfirming that you can help them achieve their goal of selling their property based on X, Y, and Z. Ultimately, you are going to get a lot of objections when talking to expired sellers. They're going to push back. The most important thing here is keeping the conversation going without getting defensive, right? So they might say something like, I don't really want to pay your commission. It seems too high. Handle that objection by saying, hey, can I show you what the difference in net proceeds looks like between a home that sells in 30 days versus one that sits for 90? Help them understand that commission is just a line item on the final settlement statement. If you can get them a higher price for their house in a shorter amount of time, doesn't it make sense for them to pay whatever commission you're asking for? Right? Most sellers, even regular sellers, right, think about commission as a lump sum expense that they're going to pay regardless. But if you can put it together in the full story of, yes, my commission is X, but here's how I'm going to get you a higher net profit at the end. And isn't that ultimately what you care about? Some expired sellers might say, to hell with all real estate agents, I'm going to just for sale by owner this thing. I can do it better than the last guy who let me down. Right? If they're talking about, doing a FSBO, say, hey, that's fair, but what's your plan if it doesn't sell in the first 30 days? Right? Put it in their mind that it is a little hard to sell a property by yourself. And so if they're not even thinking about what their plan is, if it doesn't sell in the first month, this is going to trigger in their mind that, oh crap, we better have a backup plan. Or they might say, hey, we already have somebody else in mind. And you can say, hey, that's awesome. What is that other agent going to do different this time for your listing to sell? Right? They will dictate to you what this other agent told them is the reason that their house didn't sell. And then you can handle it with the objections by either, agreeing, professionally disagreeing, or sharing how your strategy might be different. I think this is also important, and I wanted to put this slide in here. When working with expireds, you've got to know when to walk away. There's going to be a percentage of expired listings that expired because of the seller's own doing, right? We know this. And so not every expired listing is going to be a good fit for you to take because, again, we've all worked with sellers that were, less than great to work with. And so if you can see that maybe the seller themselves is the problem, you've got to protect your business and be prepared to walk away because your time and the reputation of you as an agent and your business are valuable assets and you've got to protect them. I think we talked about this last week or a couple of weeks ago on, especially when you're walking into listing presentations saying, hey, here's my, list to sale price ratio. Here's my days on market. You've got to protect those as your greatest assets because if you allow yourself to take a listing that isn't a good fit for you from a property perspective or from a seller perspective, you can skew all of those data points that help you win more listings in the future. And so it's important to know when it's time to walk away or say no to an opportunity that you're going to get sucked into for the next 6 months and it's going to take up your time, your energy, your sanity, and only say yes to listings that you think are a good fit. It's a disservice to yourself and it's also a disservice to the seller if you're going to take whatever is thrown at you. And then I think when we talk about doing an expired strategy, they call this the blue ocean play. Most agents are pulling a list of expireds that expired in the last 7 days. Sellers are still really kind of emotional at this point. They're defensive, frustrated, skeptical. Every single agent that's doing expireds is calling the same 10 people every single week. And so there's really high competition. Sellers are, right, they've got all their walls up and they're giving the emotional response of, go fly a kite. I don't want to talk to another realtor ever again. Again, I'm not saying there's no opportunity in fresh expireds, but look at old expired opportunities. After 6 months, right, their emotions have cooled down. You're often the only one reaching out to them at this point, and that's why they call this the blue ocean theory or play, is because there's less competition and sellers are open to or more receptive to having a conversation with you. They're more curious at this point too, and potentially less urgent, because right, their listing could have expired and they said, "Oh, we're just going to stay put for a little bit," because they were frustrated or burned out from showings and open houses and having their house on the market. 6 months later, everything's cooled down. They might have come back to realize, hey, maybe we should actually sell this property and move on. And so building both pipelines here can create a ton of listing opportunities for you to go capitalize on, right? Fresh expireds are great because the house is likely still in, sale mood or sale condition. But old expireds are also great because there's less competition. The sellers have had some time to cool off, and now you can come in and convert those into new, fresh listings. We also know, right, every 6 months, the market drastically changes. And so what didn't work when their house expired 6 months ago, you can come in and say, hey, here's what the market has done in the last 6 months. Here's how we're going to change the strategy on selling your house. And here's why I'm confident we can get it sold. And so here's your action plan this week. Pull this week's expired list or go back and pull what expired, between December and February of this year. Research 3 properties, pick out which one you think is the best fit. Like Beth said earlier, if you're going to go back 6 months, make sure these properties haven't been relisted or sold, and make a single call. So I want you to research 3 of them, identify one that you think is the best opportunity, find the contact information for the seller, and make that call. To the other 2, mail handwritten notes. Try to book one appointment with an expired seller this week, even a conversation just to chat. Maybe they don't want you to come to their house, but invite them out to coffee, right? Sit down in a neutral place where you can explain who you are, what the market is doing, and give them that value and that education of the real estate market, which will lead into future conversations and opportunities for you to help them sell their property. Audit your follow-up. This is what you should be doing not only on expired listings, but on, all of your lead gen and lead follow-up. Try to figure out when you're not converting leads, where are you stopping too early? Identify that gap and fix it. Maybe it's putting more, follow-up reminders in your CRM or on your calendar. But we know, right, most agents reach out to a lead less than 2 times before giving up, but most leads convert after the 10th to 12th follow-up. And so there's a lot of missed opportunity when agents quit following up too soon. And then reach out to me, or we can talk about it before training next week on what objections are you hearing from these expired sellers? What's the toughest one you haven't been able to answer? And we can sort through those and kind of role play them live on how to handle them moving forward. And so as you think about expired listings, right, these aren't cold leads, they're warm, motivated sellers who are looking for a reason to trust somebody new. And the agents who win expireds don't have something else that the other agents don't. What they have is a consistent system. They follow up more than anybody else, and they show up prepared, specific to every single property that they're reaching out to. It's not generic calls, not generic letters. It is property specific. And so when it comes to expireds, I'd encourage you, don't try to work all 20 listings that expire in a given week. Try to work 2 of them, right? It's quality over quantity when it comes to expireds, because the more specific you can get on your, initial reach out, your follow-up, and all the information you're providing shows that you are more prepared and in touch with that listing than everybody else who's just sending them generic listings or letters or postcards in the mail. And really make sure you show up to these appointments with your listening ears on. Don't show up to pitch yourself. Don't show up to dog the agent that didn't get the house sold before them, but show up as a different agent, somebody that they can trust, and somebody that knows what it's going to take to get their property sold. We know that RE/MAX agents are consistently voted the #1 trusted agent in the market. Use that in this presentation. Use that credential to show that you know what you're doing. You're a trusted agent, you're professional, you're educated, you're an expert in the market, and you know what you're doing, and that's how it's going to help them get their property sold. Any questions? I will
Nope,
give a
that
prize
was
to the
great.
first
Hey,
person who converts an expired listing.
what will you give us?
A prize.
Oh boy.
So if you convert one,
Challenge is on.
let me know.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Have a good Tuesday, and we'll talk to y'all soon.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.